straight 792 metres with almost 5 seconds spent on the brakes into the biggest overtaking hotspot. Heavy braking at turn 5 as well, but it's single file through there. The circuit doubling back on itself before the next big passing opportunity under the arch into turn 15. Meanwhile, in race 2 last season, Toprak Razgatlioglu saved his best for the final sector with a pass on Alvaro Bautista at turn 20, where speeds dropped by 150 kilometres per hour in just 4 seconds. Toprak set the race lap record in that one as well on his way to a Sunday double. A championship that could almost have been settled when Alvaro Bautista hit the front into turn 2 at Imola a fortnight ago, was reignited when he fell at turn 3. Whether that will be a turning point remains to be seen, but Toprak Razgatlioglu hasn't let any opportunity slip, winning that one from behind and pulling back another 21 points in the first 2 races of the Acerbis Czech round. Race 2 here, though, is a different story, where Bautista has had to come through from 14th so far this weekend. This afternoon, he starts P3, and with a full race distance to get through to make it 3 different winners for 2023 in Most. Steve English alongside me, Bautista's best opportunity yet.
For Alvaro Bautista from the front row of the grid, we know he's going to have a chance to lead into turn 1, but what's going to happen for the rest of that opening lap? Toprak's been the fastest rider all the way around this weekend around the Most track, and he'll certainly think that he's going to have the chance to be able to fight it out for another race victory. Jonathan Rea's been as combative as ever. The Superpole race this morning, we saw that he was putting everything on the line, just like yesterday where he was able to win in the changeable conditions. We'll wait and see what the weather forecast does. We've just had rain affect the Super Sport class, but as it is right now for the Superbike class, it's full dry conditions and full steam ahead.
Yes, damp at the start of the weekend in race 1. Those conditions gradually dried, and those that had gone out onto track on wet tyres found themselves forced to return to the pit box and swap over for slick tyres. By then, the intermediate runners who were able to take it to the checkered flag had well and truly pulled out an unassailable margin. Jonathan Rea, bravest of those, pushing from the word go to get those intermediate tyres up to temperature. He was away and gone for the race victory. It was Toprak Razgatlioglu, though, who got his revenge this morning in the Tissot Superpole race, having finished second to Rea yesterday afternoon. They were the other way around this morning. Rea still holding on comfortably from Alvaro Bautista, but a fine final lap effort from Bautista to get through on Axel Bassani, an extra point for his World Championship defence, but also putting him up onto the front row of the grid along with our 2 other most recent World Champions, and indeed that gives us the top 3 in the Championship standings, all on the front row of the grid for race 2 this afternoon. So the stage is nicely set for our 3 favourites to go head to head.
22 lap race, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. This weekend we've got a much harder allocation from tyres from Pirelli, and it seems to have been one of those situations where some riders are able to make it work a little bit better, other riders have to work a little bit harder with the tyres. Toprak actually on the number 54 Yamaha, he's had to work pretty hard to get those tyres to work. He suffered a lot of spinning of the rear tyre in the Friday practice sessions. He's gradually been able to get it more and more to his liking, and then obviously picking up the Superpole race victory and a podium yesterday. He's been able to do the one thing that he had to do coming into this weekend, close down the points gap to Alvaro Bautista.
Yes, and the key of course is to pick up the points where they are available. Razgatlioglu, 49 points is the gap now to Alvaro Bautista, but it could have been easily 100 leaving Imola. Bautista crashing out in race 2 and from the lead as well, and that's what's opened the door to Toprak, who, it must be said, has never given up on this championship fight. He said right from the beginning of this season, when Bautista was running those 11 consecutive race victories, championship isn't over, and Razgatlioglu has proven that this weekend so far.
In 2019 we praised Jonathan Rea for his ability to always finish second to Alvaro Bautista when Bautista was on his winning run, and for Toprak now, he's been able to do the same, keeps himself in those top 2 spots, winning races once again, and a 5th race victory here at Most, and he's been able to get the job done and make sure that he's able to keep his form as it needs to be. And literally the only mistakes he's made were in the celebration laps this morning when he misjudged his stoppie, and then he also made sure that he dropped the flag as well, which for Toprak, it's the only time that something's gone against him so far.
Yes, Razgatlioglu has hardly put a foot wrong this season, at very least in terms of consistency. Bautista unmatched from Assen all the way through to the Emilia-Romagna round. Rounds 3 to 5, he was victorious in every race of all of them. That's why he is 49 points ahead, but he has not been the form man this weekend. That's very much been between Razgatlioglu and Ray, and Jonathan Ray performing superbly in both races thus far this weekend, coming through from 5th on the grid after the Superpole session and winning race 1. Less spectacular perhaps in the Superpole race, but another good performance to get through on Axel Bassani and really take the fight to Toprak Razgatlioglu. A couple of occasions he had to nibble at the Yamaha man.
Yeah, it's good to see Jonathan able to fight once again, and Most is a track that it's difficult to say what bike works best around here because each individual section seems to suit a different bike. That's why it's always fun to see the results that can be thrown up at a racetrack like this. And for Jonathan Ray, it's been a chance to be able to fight at the front. And Toprak said it best when he said it was like 2021 all over again, where he was able to fight with Jonathan.
Did feel like that, didn't it? Axel Bassani was the spoiler in there, but eventually Bassani faded to 4th position. This man, Alvaro Bautista, coming through for a valuable 3rd, a return to the podium, but he must be feeling some pressure after those 2 feature-length races, the retirement from Imola and the 12th position in race 1 yesterday, coming through from 14th on the grid. They've left him on the back foot somewhat before the summer break.
Yeah, and for Alvaro, it might be on the back foot slightly. He's still got a 49-point championship advantage, so it's still very much in his hands. But Imola and this weekend, they've just been tougher for him, and it's been good to see, really, because you want to see where it's a closer battle at the front of the field. Ducati's lost 500 revs compared to this time last year, and that is having a knock-on effect. Losing the 250 revs here and there doesn't really change things, but 500, that is a big chunk. And it means that at some sections of the track you might have to make an extra gear shift. Instead of just being able to rev right up to the limiter, you have to just adjust your style slightly, and that can have an impact.
And effectively half of his championship lead lost in the last 4 races. That's certainly going to have an impact on the way he approaches, even if initially he's going to say that he'll race as usual. And if he does that, you'd fancy that he will go on to win the title. But Razgatlioglu certainly making things a little bit more difficult for him at the moment. Axel Bassani will be coming through from 4th on the grid. He was 4th in the Superpole race this morning, 7th yesterday afternoon in race 1. Just couldn't quite hold off Alvaro Bautista, but yet another race in the last 4 or 5 that Bassani has been able to lead. Only a matter of time, surely, before he finally gets that first race victory in the Superbike World Championship.
I have to say, I got a bit excited during the Superpole race. Whenever he opened up a second lead in the first lap, I thought, this is it. This is the chance for Bassani. But it's tough to win as an independent rider. How many times have we seen it where independent riders get to the front of the field, they challenge, but they need to then make a move onto a factory bike to be able to win. You need to be a Toprak to be able to win on an independent bike. For Bassani, he's been able to do a really good job with that Moto Corsa bike. Can he make the next step with that team? It'd be a great story if he could.
Couple of surprises in the top 9 positions, because Andrea Locatelli, who qualified 7th in Superpole, and Xavi Vierque, who qualified 9th originally, both suffered crashes, so they drop out of the top 9 for race 2 this afternoon, albeit they're still well enough placed on the 4th row of the grid. Locatelli will start from P10 and Vierque from P11. A couple of big winners we've already spoken about. Alvaro Bautista, he climbed from 14th on the grid and up into 3rd, so he'll be on the front row. And Alex Lowes also came through nicely from 12th position and up into 7th. Here is the spill from Andrea Locatelli, a pretty heavy one for the bike at least. Thankfully, Locke was straight back up to his feet.
Yeah, for Locke it was a shame because it ended up point-scoring run, but he'll bounce back from that. 4th row of the grid in 10th position now for him at the start of this race, and the goal has to be to try and make sure you're able to come away with a top 6 finish.
Possibly the biggest surprises, though, inside the top 9 in the Superpole race. Remy Gardner with a super ride to take P6, and Garrett Gerloff also defending his position inside the top 9. Both of those riders will be pleased with their starting places for race 2 this afternoon.
Remy's been fast all the way through this weekend. In dry conditions, he's been up there inside the top 5 or 6 pretty much every session. Front row of the grid for the Superpole session, and now 2nd row for race 2, so he can be pretty pleased with how the weekend's gone.
Michael Ruben Rinaldi also moving forward in the Superpole race earlier on today and recovered 6th position in the championship as a result, because his main rival in the series standings, Danilo Petrucci, who's been on a great run of form of late, ran wide, and frankly in the early stages of a Superpole race with only 10 laps to try and make an impression, that was a costly error from Petrucci, albeit one that he was able to surmount and still maintain a place on the 3rd row of the grid for the final race before the summer break.
Yeah, Petrucci doesn't like the Superpole race, the style of it. It's very combative, but when you make a mistake like that, you're going to have to be combative to try and come through. Picked off a few riders, got himself onto the third row of the grid. His pace in the longer race should be better though.
Xavi Vierge, as I said, like Andrea Locatelli, they're going out on track together for the sighting lap. Both of these two riders were those who retired the big spills from that previous race. Vierge getting in a bit of close combat, but good news for Vierge just to be up in the top 5 positions and fighting for them.
Yeah, and he's done a good job this weekend. In the race yesterday was very strong and was unlucky with the pit stop to change his front tyre. They ended up losing a lot of lap time, but in the early stages he was doing what he could in the wet tyre to get himself up into those leading positions, and then in the Super Pole race he was up there as well. So for Xavi Vierge, nothing wrong with that. Just interesting to see quite a few of these riders opting to do a second sighting lap as well after the rain in the Super Sport session. They just want to check what the conditions are like.
Yes, the conditions are certainly much improved and have gradually improved throughout the day. Supersport caught out with a brief sharp shower. It means that Danilo Petrucci has got to the grid before some other riders. So good work there from Petrucci. I'm sure he'll run off in a second just as we get back to him on row number 3.
He'll be gone very quickly, as you can see, already off the bike, and don't be too surprised if he leaves his helmet there and then runs back into pit lane. But for all these riders now, they're getting themselves onto the grid, and conditions pretty much ideal right now. 23 degrees, so it's not too hot, but it is quite humid here in the Czech Republic, so it's not ideal for the riders when you're sitting on the grid. So that's why the likes of Petrucci always opt to take a couple of moments just to compose themselves elsewhere.
Making our way up through the order then, and your front row will be Toprak Razgatlioglu, Jonathan Rea and Alvaro Bautista. They are the 3 men who made it onto the podium in the Super Pole race earlier on this morning. We just come past Danilo Petrucci as he makes his way away. He'll be lining up from the middle of the 3rd row. Alex Lowes and Garrett Gerloff either side of him. Axel Bassani, Michael Ruben Rinaldi and Remy Gardner ahead of him on row number 2. But your favourites, you've got to suggest, come from that front row of the grid.
Yeah, definitely. And Toprak starts as your clear favourite, given that he's been the pace setter all the way through this weekend so far. And given his performance in the Super Pole race as well, he'll know that this is a real chance for him to double up on a Sunday once again and just try and keep closing down that points advantage that Bautista holds. It's 49 points that Toprak's adrift now, but like you said, Alex, he's kept the belief up to this point and he's just trying to maintain that momentum.
Here is your grid order then. The top 9 as they finished in the Super Pole race this morning. Toprak Razgatlioglu victorious, had been second best to Jonathan Rea, but had been closing on him and clearly had the pace advantage. He demonstrated it this morning.
Yeah, he's been the rider to beat all the way through this weekend so far, and certainly he'll be expecting to win once again in this race.
P2 on the grid is Jonathan Rea. Finally got the monkey off his back with a first race victory of 2023. A long wait since the back end of last season, November last year, that he was last a race winner. It's going to be a tall order for him to match that feat this afternoon.
It is going to be tough for Rea, but we've seen it all the way through this weekend. He feels that he's got half a chance in this race and this weekend, so he's been very combative, but a 22-lap race is going to be very different than the 10-lap Super Pole race.
Alvaro Bautista completes that front row of the grids. He will be lining up in P3, and what a strange weekend it's been for Bautista thus far. Lost his fastest lap in the Super Pole session and was restricted to P14, 12th position in race 1 and 3rd in the Super Pole race earlier on today. So Bautista will complete the front row, looking to make it back-to-back podiums and restrict the damage after Toprak Razgatlioglu has taken so many points out of him over the last 4 races. Razgatlioglu then will be your pole sitter. Again, his signature appears to have changed over the last couple of rounds, but he is your leader in the Tissot Super Pole Award. So that's your front row of the grid. The podium finishers from this morning's Tissot Super Pole race. Bautista's done a lot of hard work getting through from 14th to 3rd. He's ready to try and have a go at taking a race victory and making it 3 different winners this weekend.
And certainly for Bautista, he'll know that 22 laps is the opportunity for him. We'll see what he's able to do on the run down in towards turn 1.
So Alvaro Bautista then completes that front row. We'll just go through the second row of the grid with you. Axel Bassani will line up P4. Alongside him will be Michael Ruben Rinaldi and Remy Gardner. I think we have an opportunity to head down to the grid with Dave Goddard.
Yes, I'm with Alvaro Bautista. Alvaro, a difficult start to your weekend, but things getting better today. Ready for that rundown into turn 1?
Well, yes, for sure. It was not our best start of the weekend with some problem, but at the end, this morning, we can be so competitive, and we fought until the end, and I think it's better to start from 3rd place than 14, no? So let's see. Now the conditions are a bit different from this morning, so I'll try to get good feeling with the bike, and that's all. No, try to do my best and try to end the weekend with a good feeling.
Okay, best of luck.
Thank you.
So Alvaro Bautista completing the front row of the grid. Looked on form earlier on today, and now he's got to repeat that in race 2 this afternoon. I think if he walked away with another podium finish, that would be some consolation. But if he can walk away as a race winner, that really is a psychological advantage ahead of the summer break after what, as we've said, has been a difficult recent run the last 4 races or so. Axel Bassani on the second row of the grid starts from P4, 7th position in race 1 yesterday afternoon, 4th in the Superpole race. He was the early race lead. He's making a habit of leading races. Just had the wrong tyre on yesterday in race 1, but he was first of the runners who pitted for slicks. Michael Ruben Rinaldi alongside him gets the bad luck every time that anything strikes, and he was caught out down in 14th position in race 1. Did fight through from 8th on the grid to 5th earlier on today, so he'll be happy about that. Brilliant Superpole performance from Remy Gardner, who completes the second row of the grid, and Gardner will now line up from P6, having finished 3rd in Superpole earlier on this weekend. Well, a special bike on display here from the event sponsors of Service up at the top of the grid, and an opportunity to take a look at that with the presentation being made here. So we continue to build up towards the race with the top 6 we've already gone through: Bassani, Rinaldi and Gardner. Row number 3, Alex Lowes, Danilo Petrucci and Garrett Gerloff. And Lowes in particular fighting his way through quite nicely, having initially qualified all the way down in 12th place. So good work from Alex Lowes to get through to P7.
Yeah, it's been a tough weekend for Lowes, and at least able to come through for 7 there. He got pipped on the last lap by Gardner in the Superpole race, but at least now you've got a chance in the feature length race to be able to come away with something. The Superpole section saw quite a few riders caught out with yellow flags, quite a few riders out of position, and certainly a 4th row of the grid yesterday for Lowes, very unfamiliar territory for him, but at least now he's in with a shout in this race.
Our Superpole race expert Alex Lowes coming through quite nicely onto row number 3, brings himself a little bit back into contention. Here is Danilo Petrucci. He will be starting from P8. Brilliant qualifying effort from him, but unfortunately rather squandered it in the Superpole race this morning. Did well to get back into row number 3, but twice a podium finisher now in World SBK. He's an outside bet for this one.
Yeah, and for Petrucci, it's just the steps and the progress that he's making, and Misano, Donington and now Most, he's been very competitive, so that's a real sign of the progress he's made.
Completing that 3rd row of the grid will be Garrett Gerloff, initially qualified in 6th place, had to scrap for all he was worth to take 9th earlier on today. His first point of the weekend, retired from race 1. Most wasn't a good venue for him last season, but an opportunity to end the weekend on a high here.
Yeah, and the big thing for him is, once again, he's been that leading BMW rider at times through the course this weekend, and that's the big test for Redding, for Gerloff, for Baz, and well, soon to be for Michael van der Mark whenever he's found his feet once again. But certainly for Gerloff, that has been the target. Yes,
the challenge for Garrett Gerloff is that it's been a high scoring weekend for Scott Redding because of that 4th place in race 1. Redding got things absolutely spot on there to extract maximum benefit. So Garrett Gerloff has dropped behind him in the championship and currently sits all the way down in 14th position. But he has been one of the more upbeat of the BMW riders after his change of manufacturer during the winter. The 4th row of the grid for Andrea Locatelli and Xavi Vierque, who both crashed out of that Superpole race this morning. Dominic Egerter alongside them on row number 4. Former world champion James Toseland just getting in there with a quick word with Andrea Locatelli, and he's got something to prove this afternoon as well after that spill earlier on today.
Yeah, for Locatelli it's a shame because it ended that run of 29 point scoring finishes in a row. The consistency we've seen from him means that most of them have been inside the top 6 as well. He's been a very competitive and consistent rider, but now he needs to start a new run.
Yes, the worst of those 29 point scoring finishes was the 12th place in Misano. Other than that, they've all been top 8 finishes in this 2023 campaign. So Andrea Locatelli, very consistent, but just as Jonathan Rea has come back at him is when Locatelli's had that misfortune, that retirement. Rea a victor yesterday, taking 3rd position away from Andrea Locatelli in the championship standings. Xavi Vierque will go again from P11. It's been a tough weekend for Vierque. Failed to score in each of the opening 2 races, so he'll hope to get off the mark here. Dominic Egerter still struggling with that hand injury, but did well to hold on for 8th position yesterday. and Egerter now will complete the 4th row of the grid, initially qualified up in P10. This is the home hero, Oliver Koenig. Of course, gets plenty of airtime during the Acerbis Czech round, and I think just to complete the laps will probably be the target here for him. It's not been an easy home round.
Yeah, nice to see Filip Salic down there as well, the Moto2 rider, and let's be honest as well, a former World Supersport 300 rider. So for Salic, a good chance to come down there and see his compatriot as well. For Koenig, it's been a bit of bad luck so far this weekend. Yesterday, he was one of the riders who lost a lot of time in the pits trying to make a tyre change, and then in this morning, he was just a hapless victim of the Turn 1 crash. Yeah,
the reality is there's a series of riders further down the order who in the Tissot Superpole race are never really going to be in contention for a top 9 finish. But we continue on through the order to those who certainly are in contention for the big points paying positions here this afternoon. Iker Lecuona, and how relieved he will have been to get a big points haul on the board in race 1 yesterday afternoon. Best we've seen from him over a feature-length race distance with P5. Circumstances a little bit different, though, this afternoon. It's going to be hard for him to match that one. Loris Baz alongside him, 14th on the grid, having qualified initially in 13th. Of course, passed by Alvaro Bautista, so he drops back 1. The rest of the grid is as they qualified in that Superpole session. So Scott Redding will complete the 5th row of the grid. And Redding, one of the riders that you fancy a little bit out of position, considering he did have plenty of pace yesterday afternoon. But again, different situations, different circumstances in the 2 races we've had thus far.
He's a good speed all the way through this weekend. Reading, the Superpole session and the yellow flags did catch him out badly. For him and Baz, the goal has to be push yourself towards that top 10.
So we see Scott Redding now, and the flags are out in force for Redding. He's a popular character wherever he goes, and just hasn't quite managed to get back up onto the podium this season as he did last year. But when you think about what the best venues of his 2022 campaign were, they were all in this mid-phase of the season, the UK round, the Czech round, and the French round. So an opportunity for Redding to make hay and accelerate away and build a bit of a gap as top BMW in those championship standings. Row number 6 then, Lorenzo Baldassari, Eric Granado, and Michael van der Mark, and we've already seen Baldassari have a crash earlier on in this weekend, so hopefully Baldassari can challenge to add to his points tally of just 9 for 2023. A lot more was certainly expected after his fine performance in Supersport last year.
Yeah, and it's one of those situations trying to make the progress. Jumping onto a superbike is always a very big challenge. There's so much more that you have to learn, so much more you can adapt. In the Supersport class, a lot of the time it's just get the bike in the base setting and then just grind out the lap times. On a superbike, you need to make sure that you're able to get everything set up correctly.
Eric Granado in P17, and Michael van der Mark alongside him will complete that 6th row of the grid. And I think we now have an opportunity to head down to the grid with our pit reporter, Dave Goddard. He's getting himself into position. Alongside Eric Granado is Michael van der Mark, making his return from injury this weekend. And van der Mark, it's been a bit of a tough ask for him making his return from injury, and obviously a bit on the back foot, if you'll excuse the pun, compared to the other BMW riders.
Yeah, for Mikey, it has been a case of trying to just get yourself recovered, get yourself back out onto the grid, and then just try and get yourself back up to speed. And for van der Mark, it was important to do that before we come back at the French round. We've got a 2-day test in Aragon in a few weeks' time. He wants to make sure that he's had this weekend to get some running, and then he'll give himself the chance to be back to full fitness for Magny-Cours onwards.
Isaac Vinales, Tito Rabat and Roberto Tamburini on row number 7. Hannah Suma, Oliver Koenig and Philip Ertl completing your grid. We're just moments away now from getting underway with this 22-lap race 2 of the Acerbis Czech round. Dave Goddard, are you in place?
I certainly am, yes, and Yamaha with team manager Paul Denning. Paul, the gap is coming down, Toprak is in top form, the title challenge well and truly on.
It's funny you should say that, because from a pure numbers point of view, yes, it's closing up, but if all things being equal, we shouldn't even live with Alvaro around here. You know, the difference in performance on the straight is hard to measure, but you're right, Toprak's really riding well. He's found a sweet spot with the bike, Imola and here, and we'll just race by race, and I know it's a real cliche, but all we can do is our best, and we'll just keep doing our best. That's it.
That's all we can do. Best of luck, Paul. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, there is a reality, which is that they're up against it. But the Ducati doesn't seem to have the same kind of advantage around here in Most as they did earlier on in the season. And Alvaro Bautista hasn't even always had the pace advantage over his fellow Ducati runners. You look at the way they finished in the Superpole race earlier on today. Bautista 3rd, Bassani 4th, Rinaldi 5th. So not exactly a big advantage for Bautista. At some rounds this season, he's been far and away the best Ducati rider. but his fellow Ducati runners have largely kept up with him this weekend. Continuing on through the grid then, Isaac Viñales, Tito Rabat and Roberto Tamburini. Substitute ride for Tamburini this weekend, coming in to replace Bradley Ray at Moto X, where of course he rode in the 2022 season. And again, riders further down the order find the going so tough with such a competitive field up at the front. Razgatlioglu, Ray and Bautista caught a glimpse of them there in position. The final row of the grid for the record, Hannes Suma, home man Oliver Koenig, who we've already seen, and Philip Ertl. And now we really are just moments away from our 22 laps. Your 3 most recent world champions in the Superbike series, as well as your 3 podium finishers from this morning's Tissot Superpole race, are the front 3 on the grid. Razgatlioglu and Ray already winners here. Bautista looking to make it 3 different winners.